Hey guys, it's me again, Orcs or What Ifs. Where we last left off, let's see. Where we last left off on What If Deku was a lamenter. I've gone back and rewatched the series. And I've written down the details. It took a while. Anyways, sorry? I've gone back, redid the series. Sorry, I just repeated myself. I just was making sure my headphones were working. I've gone back, rewatched it, and gotten the details down to it. So I'll go through a very quick summary of events that happened. Hizashi, who was a sergeant in the Lamenters, while he and his brothers were on one of the planets they were defending against, I believe it was the 9th or 11th Black Crusade. This was during the time where they were supposed to help defend a planet with another chapter called I think it was Executioners or Mortifactors. I can't remember which one at the time. Anyways, they win. They go through the warp. Something happens. Hizashi is thrown into the warp. Sorry, I just swallowed something. I think that's a dust bunny. Anyways, Hizashi prays to the Emperor. He sends him away to a different universe, aka the My Hero universe. He meets Inko, who's an Eldar, a very powerful Eldar, I believe is Farseer, which is like a leader, like it's a high-ranking leader in the Eldar society, I believe. I don't know why I swallowed. That was gross. Anyways, they essentially just get along together and stick with each other over the hundreds of years that they are stuck in the My Hero universe. They eventually, settle down, have kids, aka Izuku and Izuki. Izuku developed more of the Space Marine anatomy, but he's actually higher than a normal Space Marine, because Space Marine, they're not perfect where they have their organs and all that are implanted in them. So, and it all isn't always a perfect blend. But his stuff is naturally grown. So it has a higher compatibility with his body, as well as the fact that it's, what's the word I'm looking for? It is stronger, I would say, since it isn't forced in there. And his gene seed, because he does have gene seed, is actually more pure. It has less things wrong with it than the average gene seed of a normal lamenter. If you were to implant it into like he did, I'll continue on with the story. Izuki took more after the mother, with being more like an Eldar. She can, use all sorts of powers. And that was the cover story. She was an elemental, or she was able to use, her quirk was elemental based. She could move things around with her mind and use fire and all that sort of stuff. They start getting training when Izuku's organs come in, but then they eventually get teleported all around the place. Eventually, Izuki and Deku have to fight a demon of Slanesh. To save his sister, he tackles it into a warp portal that closes after he tackles it through. He gets sent flying through the warp for quite a while. Man, what did I swallow? Sorry. As I'll continue the story. They go on. He eventually actually finds the company of Lamenters that Hizashi had actually gotten separated from. They had relatively good numbers. They more or less made like a base on a planet they found that was inside the warp almost. It was quite confusing with where they were. But they sort of stayed there. they had creatures and stuff around them, and so the mortal crew that was with them sort of made like a village around them. As I digress, they essentially went through this time. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? They sort of held ground and just stayed and made sure they were okay. But when Deku arrives, he's captured by a team, and when he's taken back later that night, he's having issues, like he's in serious pain, and when the Marines guarding him go to look at him, they see things protruding from his back. Where it isn't coming out of his back, it's like it's underneath his skin. So what happens is that they take him to the apothecary, and what he does is he slices open his back. He has a pair of wings that come through, just like Sanguinius. He gets training from then on. He eventually gets high enough to where he gets eventually all his organs and all that naturally grow in, which they found it quite weird, but they somewhat accepted it. As the days go on, eventually you actually have a Inquisitor that shows up with a squad of Death Watch Marines. The Death Watch are a group, is like a chapter, quote unquote, made of temporary members, so to speak, where when you join, you are temporarily assigned to a squad, and then you are sent on a mission, typically with an Inquisitor, by my knowledge. And when you're done with your duty, you are allowed to go back to your chapter. But I digress. This Inquisitor, they didn't want to take the chance of the Inquisitor going ballistic and try and have, Deku killed. So they bid their time away. Eventually, when the time came, a group of Chaos Sorcerers eventually found them and thought they would make ripe targets to be, killed and, stuff taken from them. Deku helped immensely when it came to the battle. And if I forgot to mention it, the named characters, from what I've written down, on the Lamenter side, I'll just say that. You got Hisashi, you got the Lamenters, I'll just say the Lamenters, you got Agaron, Captain, and he's just referred to Captain as because he is the captain of the company, and Nevron. Nevron is Hisashi's brother, we'll say in this context. He's like he's very close to him. As far as my recollection, it has no other really named characters. A lot of them are nameless, or if they do have a name, they more or less go by like title, as I'll continue on and explain later. Izuku and them fight off. Izuku gets trapped by himself after they use essentially him as a psychic focus to teleport the wrecked ship to Inko and them. And as they're teleported, it's like on deserted islands. That's how it works for them. I'll keep going. Eventually, they all make it back there. Inko and them are all introduced. The Inquisitor has to be held off because he wants to kill Inko, and wants to kill Hisashi for being a traitor, and wants to kill the two kids because they are filthy, abominations, that whole ordeal. And that's how that goes. Eventually, Izuku comes back, he gets used to life around here. He meets Sato, which is Captain Diabetes. Sato is the one that Izumi has actually befriended in the time that Izuku has been gone. They're best friends. Bakugo, in this, was still a jerk to Deku because they thought he was quirkless up until, his organs started growing again. Bakugo thought he had, turned Deku away and why Deku disappeared for, over a decade. Or for, a decade. Forget how much time exactly. Anyways, I digress. As we're going through the spiral, it keeps on going until eventually Sato learns of chaos when he has to fight 3 coordinate berserkers that get there. Because how it works is that the world to My Hero Academy has a very, very strained connection with the warp. It's not like it's Fenris where it has a way to purify the warp. No, it is very hard to get a connection, like bad phone signal. You can get it, but it's sporadic. Anyways, as I as I keep going, Sato had killed at least one of the berserkers, but then Izuku and Izumi showed up. They killed them, bring Sato's family to the place where they get all that sorted out. The Inquisitor wants to kill them, but Deku essentially is challenging the Inquisitor, and then eventually the Inquisitor had an assassin with him. She kills him. It is very, very. It's been a. I know it's a lot to take in. If you guys are new to the series, hello, and I would recommend you actually checking it out. There will probably not be any like voice modification in this video. I'll get back to doing that the next video. That's going to continue on with the series next time. Again, digressing. Eventually, and I'm going over all the people who know about Chaos in this world. All for One, Shigaraki know about them. They met a Chaos Sorcerer that survived the encounter with Izuku, as well as an encounter later on where they got attacked by some Blood Angels, where the the Chaos Sorcerers had collected some of Deku's feathers, and a group of Blood Angels had tracked it down, and they thought it was something like Sanguinius feathers or something like that. Some sort of holy relic. But again, digress. He used it to teleport to My Hero World, met All For One and Shigaraki. Shigaraki is a space marine in this, or he's getting to the point where he is like having all the implants. While at this point, Fulcrum is using his way, and he's sort of implanting like ways to turn All For One to worshiping Chaos. And he's actually succeeding it little by little. All For One has been listening and hearing about the gifts of Chaos and the things that they can offer him. Shigaraki isn't one to actually worship the Chaos gods. He doesn't really think it's cool, in a way. Though Fulcrum is trying to get him to worship at least one of them. He thinks maybe Nurgle, because with how Shigaraki's decay works, it actually is a counter to Nurgle's. But again, digress. Another person on the Lamenter's side, I'll just say, who knows about Chaos that isn't from the Lamenters, if you know what I'm meaning, is Momo. Her and her family are almost killed when a Slaneshi influence was allowed to invade like a high-standing party. She, thanks to Deku, actually survived, because what happened was that Deku led a team of Terminators where they found like the disturbance. He used his wings to fly up to the balcony where she was at and saved her from being, I'll just say defiled by Slaneshi demon. As he saved her, she now sees him as sort of like a savior, something amazing and something to be like not worshipped, but something that she, I would say, loves. It's how she feels about him. Though neither she nor Deku have really come to terms with this. Deku doesn't know about it. He figures that she just likes him because he saved her. That she admires his strength. And that's how it is. Now, to continue on, we go through the story, things get bumpy. Deku's weapons, he uses a variety. He uses a bolt pistol, spear, power sword, hammer. He uses whatever really he wants. Sato uses 2 power fists. And thanks to his quirk, mixing with the augmentations, when he uses his sugar quirk, like his power-up quirk, thanks to the sugar, he's able to get massively much stronger than a normal space marine. I compare it, if I remember to, it's like he's strong enough to like fight a dreadnought. He could like wrestle a dreadnought if you want to. And they are pretty strong themselves. But again, digressing. As we get to it, eventually we get to the USJ. I'm just going to cut through things pretty quickly. We get to USJ, and Deku and them are going pretty well, but then Fulcrum and Shigaraki show up. In that battle, Izuku's dad, Hazashi, gets mortally wounded and is rushed off. The Lamenters come in to help. They lose quite a bit in numbers because their bad luck came back via the warp, since the warp area and that had been drawn closer. If I remember, it's like the warp is probably very unlucky to the Lamenters. They are cursed with bad luck. So they start, like, blades start breaking, weapons jamming, that whole deal. But when Hazashi died, quote unquote, or they thought died, Izuku and Izumi both fell into the Black Rage. Izuku was flying around like Sanguinius, being the angel of death he is. And then you had Izumi, who's crushing legions of the Chaos worshippers and demons, just completely all by herself. The two of them were not knocked out, but they were taken away, and Izuku was essentially buried, and Izumi had like a bunch of psychic might pressing down on her to keep her in place until they could figure out what to do, because the Lamenters know about the Black Rage. They know it's a very dangerous thing. So what they did was... What Inko did is actually applied some logic to this. That rage is like a hormone that it comes from your brain. All it has to do is burn itself out. So what she essentially said is that they just submerged them and just threw away what you could call the key until they just calmed down. They have, and then they went to the US. Then things happened. The Hazashi's still alive. He's like in a tank being healed, and Inko was just waiting at home. We cut further into the future, and then we're at the UI Sports Festival. To cut a story short, it's Deku just beat Shinzo. Then there's Todoroki and... Izuku, Todoroki, Bakugo, and I think it's Uraraka. Then it's Momo and Tokoyami, and then Izumi versus, I think it was someone else. Just know that the main characters that we have are there. I'll tell you how each fight really goes. I think it was Sato versus Ida. It was Sato versus Ida, I believe. But I'll just skip to Deku versus Todoroki. Bakugo versus Uraraka goes pretty similar to how it goes in the anime. She's beaten down. Then you get to, if I remember, it's Sato and Ida. Ida obviously loses that fight, where it's... How do I explain this? Sato was able to essentially crack the ground as he punched it, causing the ground to splinter. Ida actually trips on some rocks, and Sato essentially takes him and throws him outside the ring. And then it came down to Izumi versus Mina. She threw her around the ring. And then it came to Momo versus Tokoyami. Tokoyami lost that fight very handily. She has more confidence thanks to training with Deku, that she was able to use her quirk to more effectiveness. That she created her own weapons and pretty much took down Tokoyami within a minute. Wasn't a very glamorous fight, but it got the job done. Man, my phone is really hot. Anyways, digressing again. It goes down to Deku versus Todoroki. Todoroki tries, the whole freezing thing. He tries to freeze Deku so that way Deku would have to be pinned to fight him. Deku, using this opportunity, he flies around a lot, keeping out of Todoroki's eyes. As Deku's just flapping above him, Todoroki's getting progressively more angry and angry and angry. That he's just like, get down here and fight! As he's throwing up these massive blocks of ice, Deku says, you are not worth my time. You aren't even using your full strength. This ain't worth my time. As Todoroki's just throwing barrages of ice, Deku's trying to coax him into using more of his power. She's like, I'm not my dad. I'm not using his quirk. As Deku says, like, yes, you aren't your dad, and you aren't using his quirk. It's yours and yours alone. As Todoroki's like, what are you talking about? It's just like, no quirk is their parents. Your quirk isn't your dad's. He can't control its flames or its ice. Only you can do that. That's all you gotta do, is control it yourself. As Todoroki's standing there, he's just like, as he's having his flashbacks to his mom, he lets out a roar and slams down his fist as it sends fire all across the little arena as it burns away the ice. Deku's just like, at least you listened to me. As Todoroki's getting ready to set up his big end move, Deku flies down and throws Todoroki out of bounds by simply grabbing his arm and winging him. As Todoroki's getting up, as he feels like when Deku threw him, he didn't put a little force into it, he put a lot into it. As Endeavor did the whole Shoto thing, and he's trying to get Shoto to use his quirk, Deku rubbing his head because he feels like a very big headache coming on. He's just like, damn, this headache's annoying. As when he's sitting back with Class 1A, it's Sato who actually questions him. As Deku looks at him, he gets a little flash as he sees a fist coming out of him, and Deku sort of moves his head to the right. It's just like, Deku, are you okay? It's just like, what? Yeah, I'm fine. My head's just been hurting like crazy. Oh, well, maybe you should just take a nap or something. Deku's like, yeah, maybe I think I'm gonna do that. As he just sort of lays his head back, Sato goes to fight Ida. Wait, he's already done that. So then it's Ida and Deku next match. Bakugo and I think it's Momo? Yeah, Momo. And then it was not Sakura. It was, sorry, I'm scratching my head right now. It is, what's her name? Izuki, and who else? Who was the other person I had in mind? I think it was Kirishima? I believe it was Kirishima, yes. I'll say Kirishima fights Bakugo like in the anime. I'm trying to remember how exactly I had it in my mind playing out. Deku and Sato, Bakugo and Kirishima. I'll say Momo versus Izuki. Sorry. As it comes down to it, the fights really are more or less one-sided. I would say this, Izuki's and Momo's fight, Izuki doesn't immediately just lift Momo up and throw her out of the ring or anything like that. She actually respects Momo quite a lot. And what the two of them decide to do is actually have more like a match where they use weapons. Since Izuki does know how to use a spear, and Momo has actually been taking a couple of tricks and lessons from Deku on how to use a chainsword. So she makes her very own chainsword, and chainswords are wielded by normal people. So as Momo requests that Izumi makes her as Izumi requests my English not good, me English fading away. As Izumi asks Momo to make her a spear, Momo obliges. But then when it comes down to it, Momo makes herself a chainsword. Izumi's kinda a bit upset that wasn't part of the rules, but they never discussed anything prior to that. So as Momo revs up her chainsword, as they are getting ready, it's like a 3, 2, 1, go. As Izumi is by far, you can immediately tell that she is by far the better combatant between the two of them. As they're crossing blades, as Momo's trying to apply the ability to use a chainsword to cut through the spear, but Momo has enough grace and the ability to attack and then quickly withdraw it enough to where Momo's unable to dig in the chainsword effectively, at the very least. As it comes down to it, it's just that over time Momo is whittled down bit by bit until she's defeated. As I said, Izumi takes over her mother, and Eldar are, from what I can recall, are physically superior to humans. They can take on Space Marines, for crying out loud. But I digress. So now it's Izumi versus Bakugo, and then it's gonna be Deku versus Sato. Now the Sato versus Deku fight, as it's leading up to it, Deku's getting flashes in his head. He's like, man, my head hurts. So when he's getting up there, he's rubbing his head as he gets a couple of flashes. He flashes to what he can only guess is the future, as he sees Sato charging at him, jumping and slamming his fist into the ground, as Midnight says, "Begin!" As Sato does exactly what he saw in his premonition. Deku jumps to the side and kicks Sato in the back, as Sato's just like, what the fuck? As Sato was pretty fast, he wasn't expecting Deku. He expected Deku to move, but as soon as he left the ground, Deku moved is a thing. Deku would typically try to meet him or something of the caliber, but instead Deku moved. As Deku's getting more and more flashes, he's just, fuck, what is this? He's dodging, bobbing, weaving, and giving little punches here and there to Sato. Eventually, Deku gets two visions that come at once. Sato goes to throw a haymaker to the right or to the left. As Deku doesn't know which one it is, Deku goes to throw a punch, but he realizes that with the hand he used to punch with was the one that Sato retaliated with. As in this few moments, Deku's just being hit with bits of the fight, which essentially is throwing off his game. Sato sees this and is like, Deku, are you okay? He's just, I think I have another part of my abilities coming. As he jumps around and just keeps on fighting Sato, eventually Deku gets to a point where he's actually able to get Sato to ring himself out. He's like, the winner is Izuku Midoriya. As then Deku leaves and goes to rest, as he actually calls up his mom. He's like, Mom, I need your help. Can you come here, please? As she teleports in, very quietly, quote unquote. She's like, what's wrong? He's like, my head is hurting and I keep on seeing things. She's like, explain them to me. As he explains what happened with the fight with Sato, she's like, this was another fabled tale of one of the Primarch Sanguinius. As he actually asks the question, what was it? It's like precognition. Only 2 Primarchs, as far as I know, had the ability of foresight like he. He and Conrad Kurz were the only 2 that had the foresight, like it seems that you are experiencing now. She's like, why am I just getting this now? She's like, it may due to the Black Rage. Maybe it, with how close you drew to him, to this vestige, you could say, Sanguinius that lies into all sons of Sanguinius. You somewhat tapped into that power to some extent. For all I know, you'll have to train with this new ability if it continues to persist. He's like, alright, I will. As he just goes to sit down, he's like, but man, is it messing with my head? She's like, yes, I'm sorry, but it is something you must endure for now. As we get to Izumi versus Bakugo. As they're having their standoff, Izumi uses all her abilities, as Bakugo does the same. He's using his explosions to launch himself all around the arena. He knows that if he stays in one place for even a second, that Izumi could take that ability to just pretty much mess him up. He's dodging all around. He's ready. He's here. He's there. He's there. He's here. Under there. He is everywhere. As he takes shots at her, as he has come to realize, like, the ability of what, like, the AP shot. He has trained harder in these years, as he found that skill, as he uses it against Izumi. She dodges it, like, not point blank, but she dodges it at pretty close range. As she takes this ability to throw parts of the stadium at him, he gets hit by it, as they are slowly but surely whittling each other's down. Though Izumi has the upper hand in this because of her multitude of abilities, not just one. As they're going back and forth, Izumi's eventually able to catch Bakugo with a bigger boulder at a split second, as it sends him launching out of the way. She stands victorious over him. She looks out into the stands and just sees Deku standing there. She gives a nod to her, as they both know that this means that both of them are going to be fighting each other in the finals. But that is where I'm going to be ending this one off at today, guys. Yeah, this one's back. What if Deku was Lamenter's back? I'm going to finish this one out. Chaos Issei is probably going to be going. I'm most likely going to be doing another part to what if Clayton Carmine was in the Ruby universe. And that should, and then I gotta go back and finish the what if Bell was the Fume Knight or Fume Knight Rain. I got a couple of those. I gotta finish 2 Bell series now that I think about it. But I digress. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Hope you guys continue to enjoy this. Hope you guys have a nice day, nice night.